As we approach the end of my lecture, I want to move from Tolkien himself to speak further about the genre he inspired. I remember a day, early in my career, where I was doing a signing at a Costco, of all places. Yeah, traditionally not a bookstore, but the publisher set up a signing there anyway, and I was happy to go wherever people wanted me. I signed a book for a young woman who was extremely excited, and as she moved off, her mother leaned in. She said to me something to the effect of, "No offense," yeah, great start, "but is there any way to get her to read something other than this fantasy crap?" It is a sentiment I get now and then. I've been asked by befuddled journalists, by well-meaning spouses. I've got asked it in Dubai by an author of quote-unquote serious works who, when I told him I considered fantasy a serious genre itself, laughed dismissively with the most snide expression I've ever been given by a colleague. I get it from reviewers, interviews, and critics. Two simple words. Why fantasy? Why do people love this genre so much? Why does it get its hooks in us, inspire us, and stay with us? It's been 100 years almost since Tolkien wrote his famous line about a hobbit in a hole. Why are we still celebrating what he created with such lively enthusiasm? It seems at times, despite all the strides that we've made, the world in general is as dismissive of us as it was when Tolkien took it upon himself to write on fairy stories, in part to defend the genre. My first answer to this question is simple. Why art at all? Why Starry Night? Why Clair de Lune? Why can't a thing be beautiful? And that is the reason. Still, I strive for something more, though I know I cannot answer their question, not fully. Because I can't speak for a genre or for art itself. In the end, all I can do is attempt to explain in the smallest part why I love fantasy. When I was young, I thought that any given item or person in my life must be defined specifically and quantifiably as to its nature. A fantasy book was one with dragons or wizards. A mystery book was one with a detective. And a serious book was one where everyone was sad. As a person ages, I like to think they understand that definitions, like people, are fuzzy things, resisting attempts to lock them down. Words, like swords, get worn down over time. The edges resharpened until their shape sometimes only resembles the original forged creation. In this, I confess the futility of even this essay, which tries so hard to describe fantasy. I like my definitions. I find them useful. I suspect they too will erode, however, as despite my best efforts, they don't fully explain the why of fantasy. The truth is, everything has a little fantasy in it. Being inside another person's head, thinking their thoughts, is impossible, like my definition. Telepathy is fantasy. Yet, that is what books do for us. They let us think the thoughts of other people, even if they have been dead for thousands of years. Imagining a world as different from the way it is now is, after a fashion, a fiction. We live in the real world as it exists, no matter how much we dream of a different world. And yet, we dream anyway. Because if the world is to change, if tomorrow is going to be a better version of today, that starts with imagination. In the books I read as a young man, same as the books I read today, I learn about the world. More importantly, I learn about people, how they feel, think, dream, and love. Fantasy isn't about the past, no more than science fiction is about the future. These books are about learning the minds and hearts of other people. Moreover, fantasy novels are about challenging and improving the reader's imagination. And so, these books provide two simple goods that we could desperately use more of today: empathy and hope. Why fantasy? Because every good thing in the world starts as a fantasy at some point. Then we dream it into reality. Fantasy is the genre of the impossible, I still insist, but the people it inspires are exquisitely real. Thank you.
You mentioned in your talk Tolkien's innovation of immersion, and I was curious as to what you think that has to do with the idea of escapism.
Yes, he did. In fact, in the On Fairy Stories, he talks about escapism a little bit and things like that. Actually, it's Tolkien, so he talks about it a lot. But yeah, what do I think about this? I will say that I really like how Tolkien looked at it, which is that the foray into fantasy is in part to escape this world, but also then to come back with a renewed appreciation of this world. Escapism, by itself is a good. Being able to take a load off and go somewhere else is super valuable. And I think a fantastic story told well, that's at the core of what I'm trying to do, is tell a fantastic story really well. That said, I do think that part of the reason we gravitate to some fantasy books instead of others, and some stories instead of others, is that once we're done with that story, it lingers with us, right? Lord of the Rings lingers with you. Even though it's fantastic escapism, when you come back to this world, the story of, again, Sam carrying Frodo up the mountain, right? The moments in that story that are so bright and shining are so inspirational that I feel like I live a better life every day because I read that story. Do you know what I mean? And that is some of the power of a great escapist work, is the real greats, you'll go to it. You'll be able to set your burdens down, but then when you come back, the story helps you pick those burdens back up again. It's not just that you get relieved for a short time, right? We can find lots of ways to just forget about our problems. But a good book makes you better at dealing with those problems. And one of the powers of fantasy is we can explore these ideas in a way that takes some of the baggage from our real world explorations, our real world problems, gets at the core of those problems and deals with them in a way that's in some ways less threatening because it doesn't have that baggage. And then you come out of it and maybe you have better coping mechanisms. Maybe the things that you struggle with are just a little lighter. And that's what I think the power of the best escapist stories are.
Thank you for all of your